What if your escape into nature turned into a hunt? And what if the house you were staying in didn't want you to leave? Tonight, two terrifying true stories. One deep in the wilderness, one inside a haunted home. Both will leave you questioning what's real and what's waiting in the dark. Ready? Let's begin. Ethan Walker had always sought solace in the wilderness. It was his way of escaping the relentless noise of life, the pressure of his career, and the endless demands on his time. So, when the weight of the world became too much, he packed his gear and drove deep into the heart of Yellowstone National Park, where the sprawling forests and tranquil lakes promised the peace he so desperately needed. This was supposed to be a weekend of rejuvenation, a quiet escape to recharge. The sun was beginning its slow descent as Ethan arrived at the remote camping spot he had chosen, a place few people knew about. A secluded, almost forgotten area, far from the crowds and the usual hiking trails. The only sounds were the distant calls of birds and the rustle of leaves in the crisp autumn air. Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him as he set up camp by the still waters of a hidden lake, its glassy surface reflecting the vibrant hues of the evening sky. He pitched his tent, built a fire, and unpacked his gear, all while savoring the solitude that was becoming more elusive in his everyday life. As the last light of day slipped away, Ethan sat by the fire, the warmth of the flames flickering against the chill of the evening air. He cooked his meal in silence, the only company being the occasional crackling of the fire and the whispering wind through the trees. There was something so hauntingly peaceful about this place. It felt untouched, like he had stepped into a different world, far removed from everything he knew. But then, as the night deepened, something shifted. A creeping unease settled in, slithering through the calm like an unwelcome presence. The wind had stilled, and with it, the forest fell into an unnerving silence. Ethan felt a cold chill crawl up his spine. He couldn't explain it, but there was something wrong. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, and his gaze darted around the darkening woods. The fire crackled loudly, but it felt like it was barely holding the shadows at bay. Suddenly, there was a sound, soft, almost imperceptible, a rustle in the trees. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He turned quickly, but the sound stopped. He tried to brush it off, telling himself it was just an animal. But then, another sound, this time closer, more deliberate, the crunch of leaves underfoot. Ethan's stomach tightened. His breath caught in his throat as his eyes scanned the edge of the woods. The darkness felt alive, as if the trees themselves were watching him. He stood, his pulse racing, and grabbed a flashlight. It was then that he saw a flicker of movement at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the reach of the firelight. A shadow. Something or someone was out there. He froze. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body wouldn't move. The woods, once so peaceful, now seemed to press in on him, suffocating him with their eerie stillness. Was it just his imagination, or had he unknowingly disturbed something in these ancient woods? Ethan's heart pounded as he stood frozen in place, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The flicker of movement at the edge of the clearing had vanished, but the oppressive silence that followed felt even more ominous. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath. His mind raced, running through every possibility: an animal, maybe a deer, or a trick of the light. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. There was something else in the woods with him. Something that didn't belong. He took a cautious step forward, his eyes darting between the shadows, waiting for any sign of movement. The night had grown colder, the air thick with an unnatural stillness that clung to his skin. The fire crackled weakly, casting long, flickering shadows that danced like specters around him. He could feel them, lurking just beyond the light eyes, watching, waiting. A sudden gust of wind rustled the trees, snapping him out of his trance. He exhaled sharply, trying to calm himself, but the unease wouldn't go away. Every crack of a twig, every shift in the air felt amplified, like he was being hunted. The forest, which had once been his sanctuary, now felt suffocating, closing in around him. He wanted to retreat to the safety of his tent, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. Then, it came again, a faint sound, barely audible over the wind. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, They were circling him, drawing closer. Ethan's blood ran cold. This was no animal. Someone or something was watching him. Ethan's heart pounded as he stood frozen in place, his flashlight trembling in his hand. The flicker of movement at the edge of the clearing had vanished, but the oppressive silence that followed felt even more ominous. He swallowed hard, trying to steady his breath. His mind raced, running through every possibility in animal, maybe a deer, or a trick of the light. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. There was something else in the woods with him. Something that didn't belong. He took a cautious step forward, his eyes darting between the shadows, waiting for any sign of movement. The night had grown colder, the air thick with an unnatural stillness that clung to his skin. The fire crackled weakly, casting long, flickering shadows that danced like specters around him. He could feel them, lurking just beyond the light eyes, watching, waiting. A sudden gust of wind rustled the trees, snapping him out of his trance. He exhaled sharply, trying to calm himself, but the unease wouldn't go away. Every crack of a twig, every shift in the air felt amplified, like he was being hunted. The forest, which had once been his sanctuary, now felt suffocating, closing in around him. He wanted to retreat to the safety of his tent, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. Then, it came again, a faint sound, barely audible over the wind. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. They were circling him, drawing. Ethan's hands shook as he fumbled for the zipper of the tent. His heart was racing in his chest, and his breath came in shallow gasps. He could hear the sound of footsteps just outside, slow, deliberate, almost like someone was toying with him, testing his fear. The darkness outside seemed to close in on him, thick and suffocating, making him feel more trapped with every passing second. His flashlight was still in his hand, but it offered little comfort now. The beam barely cut through the blackness, only casting eerie shadows on the walls of the tent. He could feel someone watching him. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as a chill ran down his spine. He had to get out. He couldn't stay here. Suddenly, a loud thud shook the tent. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The force of it felt like something had slammed into the side of the tent, making the fabric bulge inward. He scrambled back, his mind racing. What was out there? Who was out there? Then came the voice, low, guttural, barely above a whisper. It came from the darkness just outside the tent, a voice that sent a jolt of terror through Ethan's veins. Leave now. The words were almost too soft to hear, but they pierced through the night like a blade. Ethan's body went cold. Panic surged in his chest. This was no wild animal. This was something far worse. Something not of this world. He reached for the zipper with trembling hands, ready to bolt. But before he could react, the tent's fabric was violently yanked. The struggle had begun. The tent's fabric tore under the pressure, ripping in the middle as someone pulled it outward. Ethan's heart nearly stopped. The force was unnatural, pulling with a strength that seemed beyond human. He scrambled backwards, his legs hitting the cold ground, his flashlight slipping from his grip and rolling away into the shadows. A low, distorted laugh echoed in the distance, sending a shiver down Ethan's spine. It was so deep, so menacing, it made his blood run cold. He had to move. He had to get away. But the terror had rooted him to the spot, paralyzing him with fear. Then, the air seemed to thicken around him, pressing down on his chest, suffocating him. Ethan tried to scream, but his voice was caught in his throat, as if the very woods themselves were silencing him. His instincts screamed at him to run, but the terror was overwhelming, his body refusing to obey. A sudden gust of wind howled through the trees, snapping Ethan out of his paralysis. He reached for the zipper again, this time yanking it open with frantic desperation. The fabric gave way under his hands, and in a blur, he dove out of the tent into the darkness. His feet hit the cold earth, and he pushed himself up, stumbling as he fought to regain his bearings. The footsteps were back, echoing in the night, growing louder, closer. Ethan could feel the presence behind him, like a shadow that stretched across the ground, chasing him through the forest. Every step he took felt like a race against something far darker, something that wasn't willing to let him escape. Ethan's breath was ragged, his legs burning as he stumbled through the thick underbrush. Branches scraped at his face, and the cold night air seemed to freeze his bones, but he couldn't stop. The sound of footsteps was relentless, pounding behind him, each step a reminder that something or someone was closing in. His eyes darted through the trees, his mind racing, trying to find any sign of safety. The cabin he had seen earlier in the distance was still too far away, hidden behind a wall of trees that seemed to stretch endlessly. He couldn't stop running. He couldn't look back. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest. But the fear of whatever was chasing him kept his feet moving. Faster. Harder. The laughter came again, low and mocking, like something was savoring the hunt. It chilled him to the core. A sound so unnatural it made his stomach turn. It was getting closer. Ethan could feel it. The weight of the presence behind him, growing stronger with every step. He glanced over his shoulder, just in time to see a shadow dart between the trees. His heart skipped a beat. There was something there, something moving with him. He pushed himself harder, the ground beneath him shifting and uneven. Then, without warning, the earth beneath his feet gave way. Ethan fell forward, tumbling down a steep hill, rocks scraping his arms and legs. Ethan lay on the cold, damp ground at the base of the hill, his body trembling from the fall and the terror that had yet to release its grip on him. The silence that followed was thick, oppressive. For a brief, fleeting moment, he thought he had lost whatever was pursuing him. But as his breath slowed and his heart began to settle, a new sound reached his ears. A soft, shuffling step just beyond his field of vision. It was close. Too close. Ethan's blood ran cold. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. His flashlight was gone, but the moonlight provided just enough illumination to make out the shape of trees ahead. He forced his legs to move, even though his mind screamed for him to stop and hide. He had to get out of the woods. But the footsteps didn't stop. They were in perfect sync with his own, as if whatever was following him had learned his pace, his rhythm. Suddenly, the figure emerged from the shadow stall, hunched, its features distorted and unnatural, like something pulled straight from a nightmare. Ethan froze, his eyes locked on the grotesque shape, his body frozen in place by an overwhelming sense of dread. The air was thick with a suffocating presence, and the laughter came again, louder this time, a guttural sound that scraped at his mind. With a desperate cry, Ethan turned and bolted toward the distant cabin. His legs burned, but he didn't stop, driven by the primal instinct to survive. Behind him, the creature was closer now, its steps quickening. And then, just as Ethan reached the cabin's door, he heard an inhuman screech that pierced the night. It was too late. It seemed like the perfect weekend job. Ava Parker, 28, a dedicated medical assistant, was no stranger to caring for animals, and this house-sitting gig seemed easy enough. The Roberts family had a beautiful home tucked away in the quiet, secluded area of West Lynn, Oregon. Two-story, old Victorian house that practically whispered stories of the past. They had a large, colorful macaw named Ringo and a lazy cat named Casper. Ava had done this before, but something about this house felt different. The first night passed with no issues. Ava fed Ringo and Casper, let them out to play, and settled in front of the television, watching movies. The house was peaceful. Still, the only sounds coming from the wind rustling the trees outside. Ava made herself comfortable in the cozy guest bedroom upstairs. The house, with its old wood floors and antique furniture, gave off an almost eerie, yet strangely inviting atmosphere. The Roberts were due to return in a couple of days, so Ava figured she'd relax and enjoy the quiet. But as the night wore on, something felt off. Around midnight, Ava was startled by a loud bang from upstairs. It sounded like something or someone had fallen. She froze, heart pounding, trying to convince herself it was just the house settling. But when she heard it again, this time from behind her in the hallway, she stood up slowly, her feet barely making a sound on the old wooden floors. Her first instinct was to check on Ringo, but when she passed by the living room, the bird was sitting eerily still in his cage, staring straight at her, unmoving. Ava shook her head, laughing nervously at herself. It's just a big old house, she thought. There's nothing to worry about. But as she turned back down the hall toward the stairs, she heard a faint whisper. Her breath caught in her throat as the voice, clear and unmistakable, came from the shadows behind her. "Daddy's home. Ringo." The words echoed through her mind, but she didn't know why they sent a chill crawling up her spine. "That's impossible," she told herself. The Roberts weren't due back until the weekend. But the voice, it sounded so real, and it came from inside the house. Ava's heart raced as she stood frozen in the hallway, the words still echoing in her mind. Daddy's home. Ringo had never said that before. She'd heard him speak a few simple phrases, but never anything so unsettling. Her skin prickled with an icy cold, but she forced herself to move toward the birdcage. As she stepped into the living room, the air felt heavier, thick with an oppressive stillness. The dim light from the lamp cast long, distorted shadows across the room, making everything seem off-kilter. She knelt beside Ringo's cage, trying to calm herself. "It's just a coincidence," she whispered. But Ringo's unblinking stare sent a shiver down her spine. She tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just the house, the old floorboards, the strange acoustics. There was no logical explanation for what she was feeling. But then, as she stood up, she heard it again, this time from upstairs. A low thud, followed by a dragging sound, as if someone was walking in heavy boots, but there was no one there. Ava's breath hitched in her throat. The house felt suddenly alive, breathing in rhythm with her. Against every instinct, Ava felt herself being drawn toward the stairs. She stepped onto the first creaky step, the sound amplifying in the silence. The tension was unbearable, and yet she couldn't stop herself from climbing. The closer she got to the top, the colder the air became, and the further away she felt from safety. At the top of the stairs, she hesitated. Something was waiting for her. Ava stood frozen at the top of the stairs, her breath shallow, her heart thudding painfully in her chest. The house felt wrong, as though the very walls were closing in on her. She wanted to turn around, to rush back down to the safety of the living room, but her feet felt like lead. Something was waiting for her. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach, a cold dread creeping up her spine. Slowly, she stepped forward, her foot barely making a sound on the old wooden floor. The hallway was shrouded in shadow, the dim light from the stairwell barely enough to make out anything beyond a few feet. Ava could see the closed door to the guest bedroom at the end of the hall, the door to the master bedroom next to it. The soft, muffled sounds of the dragging had stopped, but she could still feel something in the air, thick with tension. A low, almost imperceptible creak echoed from the master bedroom. Ava's body stiffened. She didn't know why, but she found herself walking toward it, her hand shaking as it reached out for the door handle. The door was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness beyond. "Hello?" she called, her voice trembling as it bounced off the walls. There was no answer, only the eerie silence that seemed to swallow her words. Suddenly, the door swung open with a violent force. Ava stumbled backward, her heart racing in terror. The room was empty, but the sense of being watched was overwhelming. What was in this house? Ava's pulse raced as she stood frozen in the doorway, staring into the empty master bedroom. The door had swung open by itself, and now the room before her was unnervingly still. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her mind desperately trying to make sense of what was happening. "It's just the old house," she told herself. "It's nothing more than the wind, or a draft." But the sense of presence didn't fade. It grew stronger, like something unseen was lingering just out of sight, watching her every move. Ava stepped into the room, her feet hesitant, her eyes scanning the shadows. The floor creaked under her weight, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive silence. She slowly moved toward the far corner, where the dim light couldn't quite reach. As she passed the large antique mirror hanging on the wall, she caught a glimpse of her reflection and froze. The reflection wasn't just hers. For the briefest moment, she saw a figure standing behind her, obscured by shadow. It was tall, its face hidden in darkness. Ava whipped around, but there was nothing there. Her heart raced, her skin prickling with fear. She backed up quickly, her legs weak beneath her. The air felt colder now, and as she turned to leave, a low whisper, barely audible, grazed her ear. "Get out." Ava spun around, but once again the room was empty. No sound, no movement, just the heavy silence that hung in the air. She knew, with a gut-wrenching certainty, that she wasn't alone, and whatever was in the house wasn't going to let her leave without a fight. Ava's heart hammered in her chest as she stumbled backward, her eyes wide with terror. The voice that had whispered in her ear still echoed in her mind, chilling her to the core. "Get out." She couldn't explain it, there was no one there, yet it felt as if the house itself was breathing around her, suffocating her in a wave of fear. She rushed out of the room, nearly tripping over her own feet, and slammed the bedroom door shut behind her. Her mind raced, but no logical explanation seemed to make sense. Was she just imagining things? Was the isolation getting to her? But deep down, she knew she wasn't alone. The house wasn't just old, it was alive, as if someone had been waiting for her. She quickly descended the stairs, her footsteps echoing through the silence. As she reached the living room, she saw Ringo in his cage again, but this time he wasn't just sitting there quietly. His beady eyes were wide, and his head was turned toward the hallway, staring at her as if pleading with her to leave. His feathers ruffled as if something unseen disturbed him, and his low, guttural squawk sent a shiver down her spine. Suddenly, the back door creaked open. Ava froze. The door, which she was sure she had locked earlier, was now wide open, the cold night air flowing into the house. Every instinct told her to run, but her feet were rooted to the floor. Whatever was in the house had made its move. It wasn't going to let her leave. Ava finally snapped out of her paralysis and ran. But as she rushed to the door, something grabbed her ankle. She screamed, but no sound escaped her lips. Ava's heart stopped as she felt the cold, unrelenting grip on her ankle. It was like something cold and solid, yet invisible, pulling her back. She jerked her leg, panic surging through her veins, but the grip tightened. A sharp tug yanked her down, and she crashed to the floor, her breath knocked out of her. Her eyes darted around the room, but there was no one, no physical presence. Yet, the force holding her was unmistakable. She scrambled to her feet, her hands shaking as she reached for the door handle. The air seemed thick, as if it were suffocating her, pressing against her chest with invisible weight. With a burst of strength, she wrenched the door open and bolted into the night, the cool air feeling like a slap against her face. But as she ran toward the driveway, a chilling feeling crawled up her spine. She could still feel them watching her from the shadows of the house. A quick glance back sent a jolt of terror through her. The lights in the house flickered, casting strange, jerky shadows on the walls. She ran faster, her feet pounding the gravel driveway. But the distance between her and the house felt shorter than it should. The whispering voice returned, softer this time, like it was coming from the ground itself. "Don't leave." Ava's stomach lurched as she reached her car, hands trembling as she fumbled for her keys. She needed to get out, but deep down, she knew it wasn't over. Whatever was in that house wasn't done with her, and it was coming for her. Ava finally snapped out of her paralysis and ran, but as she rushed to the door, something grabbed her ankle. She screamed, but no sound escaped her lips. Ava's heart stopped as she felt the cold, unrelenting grip on her ankle. It was like something cold and solid, yet invisible, pulling her back. She jerked her leg, panic surging through her veins, but the grip tightened. A sharp tug yanked her down, and she crashed to the floor, her breath knocked out of her. Her eyes darted around the room, but there was no one, no physical presence. Yet, the force holding her was unmistakable. She scrambled to her feet, her hands shaking as she reached for the door handle. The air seemed thick, as if it were suffocating her, pressing against her chest with invisible weight. With a burst of strength, she wrenched the door open and bolted into the night, the cool air feeling like a slap against her face. But as she ran toward the driveway, a chilling feeling crawled up her spine. She could still feel them watching her from the shadows of the house. A quick glance back sent a jolt of terror through her. The lights in the house flickered, casting strange, jerky shadows on the walls. She ran faster, her feet pounding the gravel driveway. But the distance between her and the house felt shorter than it should. The whispering voice returned, softer this time, like it was coming from the ground itself. Don't leave. Ava's stomach lurched as she reached her car, hands trembling as she fumbled for her keys. She needed to get out, but deep down, she knew it wasn't over. Whatever was in that house wasn't done with her, and it was coming for her. And now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? A moment when the air turned cold, the room fell silent, and you just knew something was there? If you've had a creepy experience like this, or if there's a true scary story you want me to tell, let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and who knows, your story might be featured next. Don't forget to like,